Dr. Derek Hott-Vaughn is the James Colt Professor of Urology at the Weill Medical College, Cornell in New York City, and he joins us here in New York. Welcome to the program.
Good morning, Tim.
So the new study in the, I think it was the Journal of the National Cancer Institute, suggests that men who take more than 7 multivitamins a week, in other words, more than the one a day usually recommended, might have a prostate risk problem. Tell us about the study and what you think about it.
Well, I think there are two things I'd like to talk about. First, it was a large study, almost 300,000 men, over 5 years, prospectively. So they looked at the intake of multivitamins and correlated it with the number of men who had prostate cancer. And I think the first message in the large part of the study is there was no benefit. And I think that's the first message we have to take home, is that it did not seem to prevent prostate cancer.
And then the second part is this suggestion, and I keep using that word because I guess we would both agree it doesn't prove it in any final way, that it might even be dangerous. What was the risk?
Well, that's more difficult. This is a subset analysis, and these were actually a group of patients who were more high risk. They had a higher family history of prostate cancer. They also were doing other interventions to try to prevent prostate cancer. And so there was no clear definition of a mechanism which might explain that phenomenon. That certainly warrants further study before we could get to the conclusion that multivitamins is a risk factor that might cause prostate cancer. So that certainly warrants more study.
For example, these people, as you said, knowing that they were at high risk, might have been taking more vitamins, more of a lot of other things, and that may have been the reason they were already at high risk.
That's correct. And there were different lifestyle issues in that subgroup of patients.
So let's talk about some of the other items, I'll put it, that we've heard about for prostate cancer in recent years. One would be selenium, or as some people like to pronounce it, selenium. Any news on that? What's the current thinking?
Well, I think that this may explain why we didn't see a result in this study. The early data on selenium, where it seemed to be a benefit, is in populations where there was a selenium deficiency. We don't really have that in the United States, nor do we have deficiencies of some of these other components of the multivitamins. However, there is a large prospective randomized trial currently in progress looking at selenium, vitamin E, both selenium and vitamin E, and what we call a placebo control, or no drug. And we should have good prospective data on that very large study probably in the next several years. I think that will answer the selenium question and the vitamin E question.
And what about saw palmetto, which was being recommended for benign enlargement and maybe prevention of cancer? Where does that stand?
Well, it's interesting. I was involved in the NIH in a study. Large study we were proposing for saw palmetto, and then a very nice prospective, that's a going forward study, came out in the New England Journal showing absolutely no effect on prostate-specific antigen, prostate size, voiding ability, or symptoms, and so we canceled the larger study. The problem is each of these compounds on the market in your health food store is different. So although a study is done on one compound, it doesn't rule out the possibility that a second compound or a third might be effective. So since there's no FDA control on many of these compounds, it's very hard to do this type of study conclusively.
All right, I can't let you get away today without focusing on the PSA story. Where do you stand on the use of PSA screening for men? What do you recommend?
Well, I think we've changed our attitude in this, and there was actually a very nice article in the New York Times about a week ago quoting Bal Carter, who trained with me and is now at Hopkins. And what we do now is look at the rate of change of PSA over time. So I think our recommendation now is probably all men should have a PSA at age 40, and then we watch it every year or every 2 years. And if the rate of change is greater than we expect with benign disease, then we would begin to be worried and do additional studies. So we've learned much more about PSA. I think in the future, looking forward, there are going to be some more specific tests available which delineate prostate cancer from benign disease.
Well, it's been so good to have you and to catch up on some good information with you. Thank you for taking the time to join us.
Good to be with you again.